So last year, I made a poll about who should be the next Xenoblade representative in Super Smash Bros. And by far, the most popular character was Melia. And that's why today, I'm going to be showing the rest of you what a Melia DLC could look like. This video will contain everything that you'd expect to be in a normal DLC for the game, such as the character and their moveset, their alternate costumes, the stage that would be added, and the new music. So feel free to skip through the video to the parts that you're most interested in. The timestamps are all in the description. But with all that said, let's jump into a little bit of background about who Melia actually is. For all of you non-Xenoblade fans, Melia is the queen of the high-end tier, a race that look like humans with wings out the back of their heads. Due to her being a princess, she was brought up as a proper lady, and is always serious and formal even in the heat of battle. She fights with a combination of her staff as well as wielding the natural energy source that is abundant in the Xenoblade universe, known as Ether. Despite all appearances, however, she's actually one of the older characters on the Super Smash Bros. Roster at the age of 88. She also only stands at a measly 155 centimeters tall, which is 1 centimeter shorter than Mario. But the real question is, how would she play in-game? Well, considering her height that I just mentioned, Melia would likely be one of the lighter characters in the game, and considering she has the lowest agility in Xenoblade Chronicles out of all of the party members, she'd likely also have one of the slowest move speeds. That said, in Xenoblade Chronicles, Melia uses Ether to summon elementals, which buff her and her allies within range, increasing their stats. However, she is still able to deal out the punishment herself by discharging the elementals she's summoned to deal large amounts of damage to the enemy at the cost of removing the buff. I've attempted to represent this playstyle in her moveset by giving Melia many tools that she can use to both poke her enemies from a distance as well as move in empowered by her elementals for the KO, which leads us nicely onto the part that everyone's been waiting for, the moveset. Her jab will be based off of her auto attack from the game, a simple 3-hit combo with her staff to knock opponents away. Forward tilt will be based off of the art Spear Break, which is a single thrust of her spear, which has increased range compared to her jab, designed to keep enemies at a distance, and it can be tilted slightly up or down. Her up tilt isn't based on anything, but she twirls her staff around her head. The move won't reach that high into the air, but due to the length of her staff, it should be able to hit enemies either side of her and pop them up into the air to be able to start combos. Down tilt again isn't based on anything, but it's a simple swipe of the staff at feet level. It's designed to be able to trip enemies at low percent and send them away at high percent. Dash attack will be based off of the art Starlight Kick, where Melia does her signature run, jump and drop kick, which would deal a large amount of knockback, although it would more than likely only have a small hitbox, and likely have a good amount of lag at the end as well. It would also be nice if this move can trip at low percent, to represent that it's used to topple enemies in Xenoblade Chronicles. Forward smash will be based off of the art Mind Blast. This is where Melia thrusts her hand forward and releases a pulse of ether ahead. As you can see from the animation in Xenoblade, it would likely have a lot of startup. However, this move should work like Mega Man's forward smash, where the longer that you charge it, the larger and stronger the blast gets, as well as making the ether blast a projectile, and being Melia's main way to KO opponents. Up smash similarly should be based off of Burst End, where Melia thrusts her staff into the air and releases a large wave of ether around her. This would be another multi-hit up smash, where the outer hits drag into the centre for the final hit, which will deal large damage and launch. Once again, the longer the attack is charged, the larger the hitbox should be, with the compromise of having a lot of lag at the end. Down smash wouldn't be based off anything, however, Melia would thrust her staff down into the ground and create 2 pillars of ether on either side of her. Once again, the height of the pillars would be dependent on how long the smash attack has been charged for, meaning it could potentially be used to catch opponents landing. Neutral air has Melia glowing with ether for a few seconds until it finally pulses out. This move would be similar to Mewtwo's neutral air or Palutena's neutral air, in that it's multi-hit and will be able to drag opponents around and launch on the main hit. This would also be one of Melia's main combo moves. Melia's forward air has her thrust her staff forward and raise it as she releases 3 little bursts of ether from the tip of her staff, kind of like the opposite of Samus's forward air. These little bursts of ether would of course be the sweet spot of the move. Melia's back air would have her shunt the bottom of her staff behind her, launching opponents away. It would be similar to Shulk's back air, but worse because of the lack of range. Melia's up air would have her do a backflip as she raises her staff over her head. Ether is released at the end of the staff, which would also have a lingering hitbox, making this an amazing aerial for juggling, as well as potentially a very good combo finisher as well. Down air would have her thrust the top of her staff downwards and create a small blast of ether at the end of it. Once again, this little ball of ether would be the sweet spot of the move and could potentially spike. Melia's neutral special will be Summon Elemental. It will work a lot like Olimar's neutral bait. By activating the ability, Melia summons an elemental in order, and that elemental grants her a certain buff whilst it is active. These elementals are all required for her other specials to work, so if she doesn't have any elementals when talking about those in a moment, then nothing will happen, unless stated otherwise. On screen now you can see the effects which each elemental grants as well as the order, but you'll also be able to hold down the B button to activate Summon Copy, so that you only summon the next elemental. However, the buffs do not stack, so this is only for the same effect when using other specials. Side special is based off Elemental Discharge, where Melia propels the previously summoned elementals at her opponents. The move has a tilt and smash variant, so that you can vary the speed and distance of the attack. The effect of the projectile varies depending on what elemental is discharged, so players will have to select the right ones for the right circumstances. Up special isn't based on anything, however she thrusts her staff downwards once again and discharges the elemental to give herself height. The elemental that is discharged decides the effect and the distance that Melia travels. She can use her up special 3 times in succession however, and still not go into freefall. The angle of the move can be tilted slightly, so she has a little bit more horizontal movement. Her down special will be Reflection. This is both a counter and a reflector. When used, the reflector instantly becomes active and stays active for a further 5 seconds until the effect expires and Melia has to wait 15 more seconds to be able to reactivate it. Melia will only counter attacks however if she has elementals. The effects of each elemental are the exact same as the side special, however the elemental will also disappear if no attack is countered, so this can be used for players to cycle through to the elementals that they want. Melia's grab will be based off of the art Shadow Stitch, and it'll have quite some reach and distance, allowing her to be able to grab enemies from far away and be able to use her throws which tend to start combos. Her Pummel will simply have Melia jabbing the enemy in the stomach with the end of her staff. This Pummel should deal a little bit more damage than other Pummels but be a bit slower. Melia's forward throw will have her smacking the enemy with her staff as if it was a baseball bat. This throw won't have much knockback and its only real purpose will be to create distance between the enemy and Melia. Melia's back throw will have her swing her staff into the enemy once again, but this time launching a large blast of ether, which will launch the enemy a great distance. This would be Melia's primary kill throw. Visually, it looks similar to Falco's back throw. Melia's up throw would feature a short jab with her staff, followed by a small pulse of ether. This throw would yet again have low knockback, but would allow Melia to start combos and up air strings. Melia's down throw would be based on the art Hypnotize. For comedic effect, Melia would smack the enemy on the head with her staff, and the enemy would then fall asleep. This is very similar to many other throws which now ground in Smash Ultimate. Melia's final smash, which I've dubbed Ether Overload, would feature Melia launching an orb of ether in front of her. Enemies that are hit by the orb of ether are then enveloped by the Fog King. The camera would zoom in on Melia's face as she opens her eyes, and she would unload all of the ether from within her body out onto the enemies, which would of course launch them. This is of course basically the same scene from the end of Future Connected. Melia's up taunt would have Melia creating 3 of the same elementals before they puff away, which would be another reference to Summon Copy, whilst this voice line plays.
Witness my true power!
Melia's side taunt would have Melia spinning her staff as she pulsates with ether, which would be a reference to her power effect art. This voice line would play during it.
The ether is flowing through me!
Melia's down taunt would feature Melia reaching out her hand before clenching her staff, as this voice line plays.
Sure. You can...
This is of course a reference to the Poor Melia meme, as well as the art Healing Gift, which damages yourself when you use it. And let's face it, Melia just took some mental damage. And that is the entirety of Melia's moveset. But like all Smash Ultimate DLC characters, Melia needs a gimmick. Like Sora has his 3-hit combos and Sephiroth has his wing, Melia's gimmick would be her Elemental Burst. As Melia uses her specials, a bar around her portrait at the bottom of the screen would fill up. Once this bar is filled, Melia would go into her Elemental Burst state. When it's active, all of Melia's specials as well as ether attacks would get a boost in power in both damage and knockback. This would hopefully promote players not to simply stand back and spam side special whilst the effect is active, and actually use all of the ether abilities which Melia has integrated into her moveset, to use this time to do increased damage with her combos. That said, the effect would only last for 15 seconds once activated, and would likely take somewhere in the area of 15 to 20 specials to become activated in the first place. So this wouldn't be something that could be abused by the players like Cloud's Limit Break. With everything I've just discussed, however, I think Melia would have a very unique playstyle in the Smash Bros series. At low percent, players would be encouraged to use Melia's elementals as buffs to combo the enemies and put as much pressure and damage on the opponents as possible, whereas at higher percents, it would be wiser to fight from a distance and discharge your elementals when the opportunity arises. That said, the true potential of Melia is to be able to dictate the pace of the fight by summoning and using the buffs from your elementals when it suits you and discharging them to tack on the damage. But for each great DLC fighter, we also need a great DLC stage. And for Melia, there's no better place that I can think of than Alcamoth, the capital city of the high-end tier. This stage would have 4 phases to it and would scroll through them in order before going backwards. The fighters would visit the areas the Great Hall, the Alcamoth Grounds, Cyroth Lighthouse, and the Imperial Villa in that order. Each phase of the stage would have different obstacles that would appear and would be laid out slightly differently, with the first 2 phases being walk-offs, whilst the later 2 phases have ledgers. Before we go any further, however, big spoiler warning for the stage. If you don't want to be spoilt for what happens in this area in Xenoblade Chronicles, then I recommend skipping to the time which is on screen now. All gone? Good, because once you reach the Imperial Villa the first time, the whole screen and stage will be enveloped by a green light, which will represent the moment that the Bionis awakens and transforms the high-end tier into Telethia. These Telethia would then become the main obstacles in the stage as you scroll back through it all, with different types of Telethia getting involved in the battle and disturbing the fighters. Personally, in the Great Hall, I'd like to see a Lycorn type Telethia, which stomps down on fighters, grounding them, similar to an art that it has in Xenoblade Chronicles. In the Alcamoth Grounds portion, Phoenix-type Telethia should be seen flying at the top of the screen, and will launch fighters if they touch them, so jumping up into them or trying to get back down to the bottom of the stage could be problematic. At the Cyroth Lighthouse, Gigas-type Telethias can land on either side of the lighthouse and breathe in blasts of ether which launch away at enemies. And finally, if you reach the Imperial Villa for a second time, then the Fog King can be seen in the background, and he will shoot beams towards the fighters from the background into the foreground. And that virtually sums up the stage Alcamoth. But of course, with a new stage, we need a whole new soundtrack to be fighting to. The songs I believe are the best fit for this stage and to be added into Smash Bros. Are Alcamoth Imperial Capital, Alcamoth Imperial Capital Night, Fog King Final Boss, Fog Beast Battle, Time to Fight Bionis Shoulder, Unfinished Business, The End Lies Ahead, Zanza the Divine, A Tragic Decision, and The Battle is Upon Us. Many of the songs I've just mentioned are some of my favourite soundtracks from Xenoblade 1, and it was hard to pick 10 considering the fact that many of the great ones are already in Smash Bros. That said, if you want to listen to any of these yourself, then a link to each of them is in the description. And finally, we have Melia's alternate costumes. The first 2 costumes are rather simple, being Melia's base form from the main game of Xenoblade Chronicles, as well as her future connected variant. Costume 3 features a teal and silver colour Melia, which is based on her Aerith C gear, simply because that's my favourite cosmetic in Xenoblade, and so I want to represent it here. Costume 4 is her future connected variant, which is primarily red and blue, meant to represent Shulk's outfit from Future Connected, hence the blonde hair. Costume 5 is a reference to one of the main enemies in Xenoblade Chronicles, which is the Mechon. I primarily base this one off of Metal Face's design, as he is the main Mechon that you see throughout the game, featuring a black, gold and white design with the black wings on the back of her head. Costume 6 is her Future Connected variant again, and features a green, yellow and purple coloration, which is meant to represent the party member Kino. Costume 7 seems like a mismatch of colours, but is actually a reference to Telethia, taking this green and yellow design as well as accentuating some of the minor details that you see on Telethia. And I'm sure if you've played Xenoblade Chronicles, you know exactly which Telethia I base this design off of. And finally, you might have guessed, the final costume is going to be a reference to Nene, the final party member of Future Connected, featuring a lovely pink design. And well, that's what I'd like to see if Melia was added into Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. And hopefully this video will have helped you come to terms with the fact that Melia's probably not getting into Super Smash Bros. Anytime soon. That said, I hope you have enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, as there are 2 other Xenoblade characters that I have planned to make similar videos on about what they would be like in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. So smash that subscribe button so you can see that video as soon as it's been made. But once again, I hope you have enjoyed this. Leave your own suggestions of who you'd like to see be added into Smash Bros. In the comments down below, and maybe some point in the future I might just make a video on them. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and till next time guys, peace.